The 48 Laws of Power. Chapter 1. Actions speak louder. Becoming powerful is something many of us crave. Power can help us get ahead in our careers, our personal lives, and more. How can we learn to behave more powerfully in our daily lives and ultimately get what we want? This is the question Robert Greene seeks to answer in the 48 Laws of Power. Drawing from stories of powerful figures in history, Greene challenges common ways most people approach getting the things they want. Specifically, Greene argues that we can't get what we want through quiet cooperation or playing nice. To obtain power, we must act decisively, mercilessly, and focus solely on our best interest. Greene's time-tested strategies cover a range of themes. They teach us how to communicate clearly, act powerfully, adopt powerful mindsets, and make strong decisions. In the following chapters, we'll detail some of his most powerful lessons. You'll learn about Distils and Edison's feud, rivalries of powerful Florentine families, the contrasts between Athens and Sparta, and more. To begin, let's focus on one of Greene's key themes: communicate using your actions. Many of us may feel compelled to argue when we disagree with others. But often, our words are our least powerful tool to get what we want. As an example, consider the story of how artist Michelangelo got his way without arguing. In 1502, Michelangelo was invited to Florence to create a sculpture. This would become his famous depiction of a young David. But when Florentine mayor Piero Soderini came to see it, he told Michelangelo he thought the nose was too big. Michelangelo knew that Soderini considered himself an art connoisseur and was an important patron. And so rather than offend him, Michelangelo chose to use his actions. He realized Soderini was looking from a poor vantage point and so gestured to join him on the scaffolding. From there, Soderini watched Michelangelo lightly chisel at David's nose. Michelangelo didn't, however, make any actual changes. He just pretended to. After a while, he asked Soderini what he thought. The mayor replied, "I like it better. You've made it come alive." Why was this technique successful, and what can we learn from it? Greene explains that Michelangelo knew that Soderini would not have taken kindly to being argued with, and so instead, he chose to change his perspective. From a different perspective and with a bit of coaxing, Soderini was able to see things differently. By using his actions to get his way, Michelangelo was able to maintain his artistic integrity without offending an important patron. Greene says, such is the double power of winning through actions rather than argument. No one is offended, and your point is proven. The main ideas, Chapter 1. In order to obtain power, we need to act decisively, mercilessly, and in our best interest. Sometimes using our actions instead of our words is the best way to get what we want. By using his actions, Michelangelo got his point across without offending an important patron. Chapter 2. Manage perceptions. Many of Greene's laws highlight the importance of modifying your behavior to appear powerful to others. In order to act powerfully, you need to focus on what will benefit you, even at the expense of other people's happiness or reputation. As an example, Greene details the feud between Thomas Edison and Nikola Tesla, both scientists who dedicated their careers to harnessing the power of electricity. In 1883, Edison met Tesla and hired him to help develop his prototype for an electric generator. Tesla worked on this project for over a year, often clocking 18-hour days. Eventually, he invented the first electric generator. After this invention, Edison not only took credit for Tesla's work, he barely paid him for it. To this day, Edison is still often credited with this invention, and Tesla never saw any of its financial benefits. Greene refers to this law as, get others to do the work for you, but always take the credit. By using Tesla's work to his advantage, Edison was able to achieve his own goals. Greene explains that, time is precious and life is short. If you try to do it all on your own, you run yourself ragged, waste energy, and burn yourself out. In other words, by using other people's work, Edison was able to limit his own effort on specific projects and still succeed. He knew he didn't need to be a great scientist, he merely needed to hire them. Greene adds, it is far better to conserve your forces, pounds on the work others have done, and find a way to make it your own. Thus, if you really want to gain power in your professional and personal life, look for ways to use the work of others to your advantage. After this first conflict, Edison and Tesla's rivalry only worsened as they returned to their individual projects. In particular, Edison had long theorized that a workable electrical system would need to use a direct current, DC. But somehow, Tesla found a system to harness electricity based on an alternating current, AC. Edison was livid. In response, he sought to destroy Tesla's reputation and prove that using AC was dangerous. He started a defamation campaign, which included electrocuting small animals with an AC current. He even convinced New York State prison authorities to conduct the world's first execution by electrocution using AC. Greene argues that ruining someone else's reputation can be a potential way to increase your power. Edison knew this: a reputation can make or break your professional career, which is why he made it his goal to attack Tesla's. Thus, Greene encourages us to always be alert to potential attacks and thwart them before they happen. Eventually, Edison drew negative attention for his attacks on Tesla. He then turned his energy to bolstering his own reputation. He created visually stunning experiments to entice the public. He talked about future inventions that he had no intention to work on, solely to make the public talk about him. This would allow Edison to become the household name he is today, and to be considered the father of electricity. Meanwhile, Tesla, who was considered far more scientifically brilliant, would be less well known and less financially compensated. The rivalry between Tesla and Edison is an example of the importance of acting powerfully. If we don't fight for what we want at all costs, it's likely someone else will get it instead. The main ideas, Chapter 2. We must modify our behavior to act powerfully in order to get what we want. We can use other people's work to our advantage instead of overextending ourselves. Reputation is crucial to our own success, or that of our competitors. Chapter 3. Be flexible. In order to get what we want, we need to adopt a mindset that can prepare us for potential challenges. As an example, Greene introduces another law: assume formlessness. This means you should adopt a mindset that will help you adapt to changes. To demonstrate, he describes the historic rivalry between Athens and Sparta. In the 8th century BC, ancient Greek city-states were growing considerably, many by establishing new territories across the sea. But due to its landlocked position, Sparta focused on conquering nearby territories through violent campaigns. In order to protect their newly acquired territories and maintain stability, Sparta created a society dedicated to the art of war. Spartan society relied on rigid discipline, even from childhood. When a Spartan child became 7 years old, they were taken from their family and placed in a military club. There, they faced harsh conditions. They were allowed one outer garment a year, slept on a bed of reeds, and were trained solely to fight. If any children were seen as too weak, they were left on a mountain to die. Most importantly, arts and commerce were banned, which were believed to distract from warrior discipline. At the same time, Athens was also growing, but unlike Sparta, they had access to the ocean. Thus, rather than focus on violent conquering, Athenians turned their attention to trade. This commercial economy led Athenians to become more flexible than the Spartans. Athenians adapted to different cultures, established new social structures, and embraced many forms of art from other lands. This flexibility gave the Athenians a surprising advantage when war ultimately broke out between the two city-states. Although the Spartans won, and consequently absorbed Athens, they were overwhelmed by the Athenian way of living. Athenian flexibility caused great problems for rigid Spartan society, slowly breaking down their discipline. Meanwhile, Athens was adapting to losing its empire, managing to thrive as a cultural and economic center, Greene says. The Spartans' inability to adapt and exclusively focus on warfare led them to grow weaker and weaker. Almost overnight, this once mighty nation collapsed, never to recover, Greene says. What can we learn from Athenian flexibility? Greene explains that by prioritizing safety over mobility, the Spartans limited their ability to grow and adapt. Nothing in the world can remain stable forever, and a defense mechanism that focuses on stability is doomed to fail, he explains. Thus, each of us can aim to emulate Athenian flexibility. By embracing changes around us, we can continue to adapt and advance. The main ideas, Chapter 3. Being formless means adopting a mindset that will help us adapt to new circumstances. Spartans' inability to change, compared to the flexibility of the Athenians, would lead to their downfall. Being flexible is the only way to ensure you will adapt and survive as things change. Chapter 4. Transform weakness into power. When trying to behave powerfully, it can be difficult to ascertain what choices to make. For example, imagine you encounter an opponent stronger than you may feel compelled to hold your ground and fight back. This choice might lead to undesirable results. It's likely that you won't win, and you'll give them the satisfaction of beating you. Thus, Greene suggests we use the surrender tactic, transform weakness into power. This may sound surprising. How can surrender be a powerful action? Surrendering can be a useful way to surprise your opponent and ultimately help you get your way. Greene describes it this way: surrender gives you time to recover, time to torment and irritate your conqueror, time to wait for his power to wane. In other words, although it may seem unintuitive, surrender can sometimes be the best way to gain power. To demonstrate the utility of surrender, Greene shares a story about German writer Bertolt Brecht. In the 1920s, Brecht became a devoted communist. From then on, Brecht's plays, poems, and essays focused on revolutionary ideas. This became a problem when Adolf Hitler rose to power. Hitler sought to eliminate all subversive ways of thinking, including communism. Thus, Brecht fled to the United States in 1941, where he worked in the film industry. Brecht's communist screenplays had little success, so when World War II concluded, he decided to return to Europe. At the same time, the United States was gearing up its own campaign against communism. The US established the House Un-American Activities Committee, which specifically sought to identify communists in Hollywood. A month before his planned departure, Brecht and a number of other writers, producers, and directors were asked to appear in court. This cohort, known as the Hollywood 19, met to prepare a strategy for their court appearance. Most favored an antagonistic approach. They wanted to read statements challenging the constitutionality of the committee. Even if they were imprisoned, the group believed it would at least garner publicity. Brecht disagreed. He didn't believe the publicity would be worth their freedom to produce the screenplays they wanted. Instead, he believed that if they surrendered, they were more likely to get what they wanted. The day of the court hearing, the rest of the Hollywood 19 assumed Brecht would follow and behave antagonistically. In reality, Brecht was the picture of congeniality. He wore a suit, answered the committee's questions, and deferred to their authority. He also used a translator, which helped him answer questions ambiguously and dodge many direct responses. At the end of the hearing, Brecht was set free. The next day he left for Europe and never returned. His colleagues, meanwhile, were blacklisted for years. Greene explains that Brecht kept the upper hand by appearing to yield while all the time running circles around the committee. Brecht shows an unintuitive tactic to achieve what he wanted and maintain power, even if it meant surrendering. The main ideas, Chapter 4. Surrendering can help you find time to overcome your opponents and gain power. Sometimes the choices we need to make are unintuitive, like surrendering. Even when you surrender, you can use the opportunity to misdirect your opponents and regain power. Chapter 5. Use people to get ahead. The 48 Laws of Power. To get what we want, we sometimes need to use other people. Many of us may be wary of using relationships for our own benefit, but Greene argues for its necessity. One potential tactic to consider is using people who can give you useful information. Greene calls this law, pose as a friend, work as a spy. Playing the spy means figuring out how to get others to give you important information. For example, Greene suggests that, in polite social encounters, learn to probe. Ask indirect questions to get people to reveal their weaknesses and intentions. By being friendly or nice to others, you can obtain information that will help you get ahead. To better understand this principle, consider the story of how art dealer Joseph Jouvin won over industrialist Andrew Mellon as his client. Although Jouvin had monopolized most of the American millionaire art collecting market from 1904 to 1940, he had yet to sell to Mellon. Jouvin was determined to change this but had been warned that Mellon was a taciturn and difficult man who thought little of him. Thus, he began to track his prey. He learned about Mellon's phobias, habits, and tastes by bribing his staff to share private information. When Mellon booked a trip to London, Jouvin quickly followed suit. He stayed in his same hotel and then followed him to the National Gallery. At the gallery, Jouvin wowed Mellon with his knowledge and his similar taste. Upon their return to New York, Mellon decided to visit Jouvin's gallery. He was surprised to see how much of his own taste was reflected. After this, Mellon would be a devoted client of Jouvin's until the end of his life. Jouvin's success, Greene argues, lies in the fact he was smart enough to play the spy. By using others to gather information, he was able to get his way. Thus, we also shouldn't be afraid to ask questions or establish friendships in order to help us get what we want. The main ideas, Chapter 5. In order to become powerful, we need to use people to get what we want. Playing nice or befriending people can help you glean important information to advance your own course. Joseph Jouvin was able to acquire Andrew Mellon as a client after gathering information on him from others. Chapter 6. Maintain power. Once you have power, it can be difficult to maintain. To do so, you must behave in a way that doesn't draw attention. As an example, consider Greene's law: never appear too perfect. If you appear as though you have no flaws, you're likely to make others envious. Envy creates silent enemies, Greene explains. Thus, it is smart to display defects and admit to harmless vices. By appearing more approachable and human, you'll be less likely to garner negative attention and more likely to maintain your power. If instead you garner negative attention, people may challenge you or try to take your power. Consider the story of two warring medieval Florentine families, the Albizes and the Medicis. The Albizes had a long history of power in Florence. Florence's republican government tried to curtail the influence of noble families, but the Albizes still managed to fill government positions with their allies. So when the Medicis began to grow wealthier, the Albizes felt threatened. The Albizes used their government influence to have Cosimo, the Medici patriarch, arrested and exiled. While Cosimo was away, the Albizes faced growing criticism for their increasing power and were soon also sent into exile. When Cosimo returned to Florence, he knew better than to show as much ambition as the Albizes had. But if he was too docile, he might allow other competitors to emerge. Thus, he solved the problem in two ways: he used his wealth to influence important citizens and placed allies into government positions. And anyone who complained was taxed extensively or had their properties taken. These strategies helped Cosimo grow his power. Greene says, the Republic survived in name only. Cosimo held the strings. But in order to ward off envy, Cosimo hid any suggestion of this wealth and power. He dressed humbly, kept only one servant, rode a mule, and never offered public opinions. Understanding the power envy has in a democratic environment, Cosimo avoided the appearance of greatness, Greene explains. This strategy helped maintain his power until his death. Thus in our own lives, as we seek to obtain and keep power, we too should avoid flaunting our grandeur. Rather than assume that when we flaunt success we will draw admiration, we should know that it will only instill dislike in others. The main ideas, Chapter 6. By appearing more human and approachable, you will mitigate how envious people are of you. Flaunting your power or wealth can cause you to create enemies. Cosimo, the patriarch of the Medici family, knew to hide his wealth and power so as not to attract negative attention.